we are
And trauma.
processing, so much trauma. So everyone listening, please be gentle with yourself. Please do not allow your inner mean girl, that voice inside your head that tells you that you're not doing enough, that you're not perfect enough, that you should use this time to lose, 50 pounds or whatever the case may be. It's like, please don't let that inner mean girl beat you up about what you're doing or what you're not doing.
This is your Kick-Ass Life podcast, episode number 332 with guest Amy Ahlers.
This is the Your Kick-Ass Life podcast with Andrea Owen, a no BS guide to self-help and badassery. Because ladies, let's face it, life's too short for it to not kick ass. And here's your host, the girl who serves it up straight with a side of crazy, Andrea Owen.
Hey there, ass kickers. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. I am sending you so much love right now. I know that those of you listening, you're in all different places. You might be worried. You might be mostly okay. You might be numbing out more than you're used to. You might be working out more than you usually do. Wherever you are, I'm sending you so much love right now. I have a lot of podcast episodes that were recorded pre-pandemic that are still going to go out, but I do want to, I'm kind of recording new episodes that are timely, that are talking to people that I love and respect and admire in this industry. And we're talking about as things are happening now and how we can help you deal with what's going on right now. My guest is someone that I'm so excited to bring you because she's not only a dear friend of mine, but she is someone who has been a life coach. She has been in this industry longer than I have, which is a long time. I'm just going to be honest with you. Amy Ahlers is here. I re-aired an episode that she was like on one of my first 100 episodes a long time ago. And I re-aired that episode over the summer. It's episode 293. In that particular episode, we talk about inner wisdom. We talk about inner mean girl triggers, as she calls the inner critic, the inner mean girl. We talked about the need to belong. So I know you're going to love her so much that you're going to want to go and listen to that episode if you missed it. Again, episode 293. And she and I have gotten together. We're doing a free community call for you. We do talk about it later in the episode, but I wanted to tell you about it now in case you don't make it to the end. It is our top 10 kick-ass tips for getting your project started, done, or out the door. Amy Ahlers is an author right alongside with me, and I've never taught a writing class before, and people keep asking me when I'm going to do it. And I'm like, I don't know, but I feel really called to do it right now because I think that writing can be a really fantastic medium for processing and for dealing with what's going on and for healing. So this call is our tips, not necessarily for people who want to write a book or, do the whole book proposal thing and get a traditional book deal. If that's you, then this call for sure is for you. But if you're someone who wants to start a blog, if you're someone who knows that journaling is important, you hear about it all the time in personal development, but you're like, oh, I don't know, just don't ever get around to it. We're going to talk about that too. So you can head over to wakeupcallcoaching.com/project and sign up for free. It's April 22nd at 3:00 Eastern time. There will be a recording if you can't make it live, but I would love to see your lovely face there. All right. For those of you that don't know Amy, let me tell you a little bit about her. Amy Ahlers is a master women's leadership coach, keynote speaker, and the best-selling author of Big Fat Lies Women Tell Themselves and Reform Your Inner Mean Girl. Amy is on a mission to stop women from self-bullying and from being so darn hard on themselves so they can make their greatest possible contribution. Amy leads a powerful women's leadership incubator called Rise and Lead to help women confidently rise into the income, impact, and contribution they desire and deserve. Amy wholeheartedly believes it's time for women to claim their seat at the leadership table. So without further ado, here is Amy. Amy Ahlers is back on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to be here too, because I think when you were on the first time, which I re-aired in the summer, and you and I hadn't really developed a friendship yet, and we have now. And so I'm even more excited to have you on the show because I know even more how wonderful you are, both on a professional and personal level. So we could talk about so many different things. And
So true.
because you have, you've been like me, you've been doing this for longer than I have and have so many different topics that you could riff on. But I want to start with what you wrote a book about and what is so universally a challenge for, I think, every woman. And that's what you like to call reforming your inner mean girl.
Yes.
So, I mean, start wherever you want with that. But what made you decide to co-author that book? Like, let's start way back then.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I noticed this pattern over and over and over and over again, especially with women, that no matter how successful, no matter how beautiful, no matter how amazing a woman is, on some level behind the scenes, she is beating herself up. She's being way too hard on herself. She's putting all this pressure on herself. And I really noticed this theme over these last 2 decades of coaching. And I kind of thought that when I started working with women that were more high level, had more money, more success, had the house, had the cars, were big wigs at Silicon Valley companies, I thought that this pattern wouldn't be there anymore.
Right.
But of course, as we know, the internal world often has very little to do with what's going on in the external world. And I found that no matter who I was sitting across from, no matter how much success they had achieved, there was this inner world thing of being chronically self-bullying.
Yeah.
And I teamed up with my friend, Christina Rilo, and we did this course called Inner Mean Girl Reform School that we ran for years together as an online program. And then we ended up going out and getting a book deal based on that super popular course of ours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned you've been doing this for the last 2 decades, and on a micro level over the last 2 weeks, as we're recording this, we are, I hate to say it, but probably in the beginning stages of this global pandemic.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing, and tell me, I don't think we've talked about this, offline, is I'm seeing a lot of inspirational, and trust me, I'm all for an inspirational post here and there,
totally.
motivational post. But I'm seeing a lot of do get in the best shape of your life while you have all this time off, and organize your closets and make all these Pinterest desserts. And I'm like, dude, I have the lowest expectations of myself right now.
That is so, I love that you have low expectations of yourself.
And I'm telling all my clients too.
Yeah. I mean,
take naps.
Dear Lord, have mercy. It's that we are processing so much collective grief. We are processing, so much trauma. So everyone listening, please be gentle with yourself. Please do not allow your inner mean girl, that voice inside your head that tells you that you're not doing enough, that you're not perfect enough, that you should use this time to lose, 50 pounds or whatever the case may be. It's like, please don't let that inner mean girl beat you up about what you're doing or what you're not doing.
Yeah.
It's such a time of pressure. I so agree with you. And it's insane.
It's, and I want to say, if you're feeling super motivated, hell yeah. Go for it. But what I'm seeing, and as I'm talking to my clients and we're messaging back and forth, and, I have one client that's like, I'm barely working from home and I took a 2-hour nap today. I feel so exhausted. Why do I feel so exhausted? I'm not even doing anything. I'm like, honey, you are processing so much. She's got 2 kids at home. She's a single mom. I'm like, you're processing so much. And I think people's survival has just kicked in, and that's exhausting. It's like frying your circuit board nervous system.
It is. And when you look at the brain science behind it of what happens when we go into the stress response, the fight, flight, or freeze. And I think it's so useful. I'm curious for you, Andrea, which do you do when you're on the stress response? Do you go into fight? Do you go into flight? Or do you go into freeze?
It depends on the situation. Yeah. If it's a physical thing, if I'm physically scared, if someone jumps out at me and, I like to think I'm going to start swinging, but I'm not that badass. I freeze. I totally turn into an animal. I'm like, oh, I can't even scream. Yeah. But in situations like this, I don't know if you would consider it flight. I get very tunnel vision in terms of busyness. Yes. That's my coping mechanism. I'm an overfunctioner.
Yes. I totally get that. Yeah. And I think for everyone listening, it's which one do you go to with this particular trauma that we're in right now? And I think it's interesting for us to just know that we have this way of coping in our brain when trauma happens. And so knowing oh, that's my flight, going and taking a nap is me actually
sleep.
Flight. oh, me picking a fight with my spouse, with my partner, with my kids is me going into fight, or turning on the news and yelling at the TV at whatever press conference you're watching, going
Right.
into fight, you going like, I just feel completely immobilized and I don't know what to do and I can't start anything and I can't figure out how to homeschool my kids. And like, I have the list, like I have all the sample schedules and I just like completely shut down and freeze up. Like that's you freezing. And that is to be expected during this time. We are in the stress response. But I also just have to say that we also have this thing in our brains called the relaxation response, which is the antidote to this stress response, which is about us breathing. This is why just literally taking a few deep breaths can help your nervous system calm down. Doing, meditating, exercising, not because you feel like you need to lose X amount of weights or get in the best shape of your life during the pandemic, but because you're like, I'm going to actually take care of my brain right now. That's a wonderful thing for us to do.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. And some days I do it well and other days I don't.
Yeah.
And I think like now more than ever, I'm honestly looking at this as being very similar to 2016 when I lost my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 weeks later, it was the presidential election, which did not go how I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And it was and I had very low expectations of myself during that time. And I'm looking at this time as very, very similar.
Yeah.
If I get out of bed and get dressed and can like serve my clients and like barely do what's on my to-do list, I'm calling that a massive win.
I think that's so brilliant. So brilliant.
And however I need to process. So it's, writing and talking to my friends and being in community. Those are my priorities.
I love that. I think it's so important. And when we look at statistically now, we have lost more people in the US alone than we did on 9/11 at this point where we've reached that tipping point. So as a country, and whether you live in the US or in Italy or in Spain or in China or, wherever you're listening from in Canada, it's like, really understanding that we are grieving big time as a country right now and as a human race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's what's really fascinating about it and incredibly sad is that this is touching everyone. There's not every natural disaster before us or every problem has been regional.
Right.
And it's no one is immune to this. And so anyway, I kind of switching gears a little bit. You wrote another book called, you say the title because I don't want to say it wrong.
Big Fat Lies Women Tell Themselves.
Yes, that's what I thought it was.
First one.
I was like, I didn't want to get it wrong. Your first book. And I love how it's broken down into work and, body and personal, like motherhood, all these different areas. Yeah. And one of the lies is that you say that women tell themselves is it's too late for me.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot, especially with women who are our age and older.
Yes, I know, right? Once you reach midlife, there is this thing of like, okay, well, now I'm past my prime. And that means that I can't start anything new. That means that I can't do that dream project that I have. That means that I can't write.
And beating themselves up for not doing it 10, 15 years ago.
It's too late for me, that feeling of regret. And I mean, both you and I know that is such bullshit, that it is never too late. And when we're in a time like this, like a pandemic, obviously all of us have death on our minds, understand that no one here gets out alive, as the saying goes, that we all are going to eventually die, hopefully all of us in a very long time from now, in a way that's peaceful and beautiful, God willing.
Yes.
Goddess willing, whatever words work for you, divine willing. But, it's time for us to not put things off. It's time for us to say, actually, it's not too late. And one of the stories I tell in that particular chapter in the book, because each lie is followed by a truth, a corresponding truth. And I usually tell a story in there, and then there's a coaching exercise, and then there's an inspiring quote and an affirmation. And one of the stories I tell is about this man that at 98 years old decided to learn how to read. He had never read in his life. I'm forgetting his name right now. But I heard that story and I was like, okay, y'all, like he literally went to kindergarten at 98 years old. The whole class helped him learn how to read. The kindergarten teacher helped him learn how to read. And they celebrated him. It was so beautiful. And it was like, if there ever was an inspiration that it's never too late, think of this 98-year-old man who learned how to read for the first time in his life at 98.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that story. And what I always tell my clients who who are struggling in that place, who are especially like the beating themselves up for not having done it sooner and having regret, I always really want to acknowledge that. I don't ever want to be dismissive and say, it's not too late and you shouldn't be beating yourself up over it.
Right.
It's like, of course, I don't want you to beat yourself up for it, but it's okay to sink into the regret. Because I don't know about you, but I hate the saying like, don't have any regrets.
Right.
And I'm like, fuck, I have a few. And I'm a big believer too of really working on forgiving your past self and knowing that you were doing the best that you could.
Right.
15 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, and it's just, I have a regret that I didn't go to Australia. I had the opportunity to study abroad in Australia. I was like 30. I was like finishing my bachelor's degree.
Wow.
And I was dating someone. It was a very dysfunctional relationship and he didn't want me to go. So I stayed.
Isn't that so?
It doesn't mean doesn't mean I can never go to Australia again. It just means that I can't go during that time in my life when I was young and more carefree and didn't have children yet. And I'd always wanted to go and I was married to somebody before who never wanted to travel. So it was really a perfect opportunity for me to go. And I was later beating myself up for listening to a man, and what was I tolerating? And that was the stupidest decision. And what if I had met some like hot Australian guy, little Aussie babies? But it's just, and I'm like, you know what? I just let myself feel that regret. Mm-hmm. And it was so much easier for me to forgive my 30-year-old self who did not have better coping mechanisms at that time.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say this because this is so weird. That's one of the biggest things I regret in my life is that I was all set to study abroad in Indonesia when I was in college. And then I ended up not going because of a project and a boy.
Oh my gosh.
That is so crazy. Isn't
That's so funny too. That I also think it's funny that you were going to go to Indonesia. And like, I imagine you like riding on the back of a elephant, like meditating and like studying with these like gurus. And I was going over there to like drink Foster's beer and get laid. Australia.
Yeah. I was going over to study a certain type of dance and theater because I was a drama major.
Oh my God.
And so I was going over to study this particular type of thing. And I was like all signed up. I was ready to go. My parents were like kind of beside themselves because they didn't want me going that far away. And then like at the last minute, I pulled out. Isn't that funny? Wow.
Whatever happened to the guy that you were dating?
We actually moved in together. We were together for 5 years. He was my college boyfriend that then after college, we moved in together and then we broke up after we moved in together. Like we lived together for like a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. No, he's a great guy, but it was not the right relationship.
Yeah. Well, not it. You talk about, I love that you call yourself the wake up call coach. And I, in your book, in the Big Fat Lies book. Yeah. It's like, I think it's the very last chapter when one of the lies is only near-death experiences serve as wake-up calls.
Right.
Which can be a big wake-up call, a near-death experience.
Of course.
Like, holy crap.
Of course.
But I think it's very poignant to what's happening now. And I don't want to be morbid, but like, let's not, pretend like nothing's happening. And so can you speak to that in regards of what we're all experiencing now?
Yeah. Well, I think that oftentimes people feel like the only way that they get stunned awake to what's really happening or aware of who they are or aware of what really matters to them is with something like a near-death experience. But when we look at it, we don't have to be the one in the hospital right now on a respirator to really understand what's really, truly important in life. I feel like we're all getting that reminder right now. And I also feel like at any moment that we choose, we can actually lean into what is it that I need to wake up to right now? What is it for me to learn right now? What is really important to me? I mean, this is why coaches are so amazing and why I love the coaching profession so much and why any of your clients are so lucky to have you as their coach, Andrea, because it's like, we don't pull any punches when it comes to that. We remind our clients of that. We say to them, what is it that's really important to you? What are your values? What are you beating yourself up about? What have you not forgiven yourself for? What have you not forgiven people in your life? Can we just please move forward and really lean into the depth of what is really important for us?
Yeah.
And can we do that soul check-in with ourselves to say, what did I come here to do? What is my soul or whatever word works for you? If the word soul doesn't work, but it's like, what is your soul's message for you right now? What is the world's
Mhm.
message? I mean, I've seen some interesting writings going on right now of like, here's the message from the pandemic for you. And part of me kind of rolls my eyes. And then if I read them, sometimes there's some really interesting things of, wow, like I posted up on my Facebook wall, imagine this is all over. We're out of quarantine. You're totally
We're running
free.
through the streets towards each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's the first thing that you want to do? And 99% of the people were like, either hug someone, hug my dad, hug my dog, hug my kids, like go hug my neighbor, whatever it is. And it was like, yeah, the lack of human contact, how much will we not take that for granted again?
Yeah.
To see my kids when like my parents have come by, my mom and dad are amazing grandparents and they've come by a few times and dropped off stuff and they'll kind of drop it off on the porch and then wave. And to see my 6-year-old like be like, air hug, it's just like the saddest thing.
It is sad.
And it's like, well, we won't take that for granted again.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Have you throughout all of this, I always like to ask life coaches this.
Yeah.
Because I think that for the most part, like we do our own work, but sometimes we can become complacent. We're humans.
All that I can think of is your shit life coaches say video with you and Smitty. And I'm like, what is she going to ask me right now?
What cheesy, powerful question is she going to ask me? Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know what that is,
you have to see it.
2012, which is like a lifetime ago in internet years. Amy Smith and I did a video call. It was when the whole trend was going on, like shit yoga teachers say, shit, be breakdancers say, I don't know. And we did a shit life coaches say, and I have to say it was really funny. I would do it.
It stands up to this day. And I'm guilty of asking all the questions that you talk about on there.
Me too. How else would we come up with that list if we were asking our clients the same thing? Like at one point I'm like, practicing giving birth and like bearing down with my question with my client. Anyway, all that to ask, is there anything that this pandemic has brought up for you where you were like, if I was on a respirator, would I regret anything? Or do you feel like you have lived your life to the fullest?
This is a great question. Well, first of all, I feel so clear that I'm so not ready to go. I feel like it's one of those things of like, I have a 6-year-old, I have a 12-year-old. Like, I want to see these, they're both girls and identify as girls. And they both are like, I want to see them if they choose to have their own kids. I want to be a grandma one day. Like, I have so much living to do. So especially when I've heard stories of people that are on the younger end that have lost their lives to this horrible, COVID-19, it's like, I just think, oh my gosh, like I just can't imagine going right now. I feel like I have so much more to give, not only in my personal life to my kids, to my husband, to my friends, to my inner circle, but also in my work. I feel like I have more to say. I have more to contribute. I have more ways that I want to be of service. And I just don't feel ready at all. And if I feel like, that did happen, I don't know if I'd have regrets as much as I just feel like I got cheated somehow. I just had so much more living to
I'd
do.
be like, I object.
Yeah.
Like Reese Witherspoon again.
Yes, exactly.
Nope.
I know. Well, and that's one of the things, I lost a really good friend to cancer a few years ago. Gosh, it was just because he actually died on my daughter's birthday when she was on her second birthday and she just turned 6. So 4 years ago. And it was just one of those things where I really got that we don't get to choose when our time is up. And I really got that. I feel like I had a lot of deaths that really made sense in my life up to that point. Whether like my grandparents or people like where they had lived a good long life. And, but I feel like when we watch someone go that we feel like this does not feel like their time. Like you said, like I object. I don't like this. This does not seem right to me at all. And when I realized that, it also became such an inspiration for me of, you better do what you came here to do. Don't let your song go unsung. What else is there for you to do? How can you be of more service? Stop beating myself up, start living the life that I want to live, all of those things that sound so cliche, but it's true.
Cliches are cliches for a reason, because they're true and they're important. I think especially in our industry, and I think because the downside that the coaching industry has become so much more mainstream is that there are some things that get said that have become a little bit just like eye rolly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you take a step back, it really truly is, I think, the reason that you and I fell in love with coaching.
Yeah.
And we're, when we were either saw someone be coached or were coached ourselves, we're like, wait, this is a job?
I know.
We get to have conversations with people that have the ability to change their life for the better. Are you kidding me?
I know.
Like that's my 2006 self, that was me, where I just was like, sign me up. Little did I know I had to do my own work.
Right.
And I didn't like that at first.
Yes, I know, right?
But I think that, yeah, it is the things like you were saying a few minutes ago. It's like, what truly matters to you? What are you tolerating? Like, what is the bullshit that you're tolerating in your life that you just keep making excuses for, that you say that you'll get to it tomorrow, that you say, I can't have that conversation with that person, it's too uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think about that. Like, if you were on a ventilator, would any of that matter?
No.
Like, would the excuses matter anymore?
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I so agree with you. Like, what a privilege to get to have these truth-telling, courageous conversations with people, and that they signed up for that. Like, I just still, I feel like, I wonder if you feel this way. A lot of the people that I talk to that have become coaches, especially really successful coaches, I'll say to them, like, I feel like when I found coaching, I was like, that's the name for what I've always been doing. Oh. Like, there was this feeling of like, oh, that's why I was the friend in high school that people would call and have these really deep conversations with.
Yeah, that wasn't my experience.
No,
but I can absolutely understand that that's yours.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I did the new intro, when I re-aired your episode over the summer, I might have said this. If I didn't say it, I was thinking it, that it's funny because as I was describing you, like, Amy Ahlers is the most compassionate, like, genuinely kind, loving person I've ever met. No one would describe me as that. Like, I don't think anyone's ever described me as that. And I'm not mad.
No, right.
It's just like, that's your superpower. Like, I'm enthusiastic. Yes. I have a lot of energy. Like, people describe me as like, she's fun. She's, like, energetic. And yeah. And I love that about me.
Yeah.
But I was the one who was the motivating one, the inspiration. I was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Totally. And like, I was genuinely trying to get people out of their seats in the stadium and cheer for the team. That's just who I am naturally. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram.
Yes.
I'm just like fiery and all those things.
Yeah.
And so I think that both of those things make great life coaches.
Yeah, totally. Well,
the way you are and the way I am.
Yeah, but I also think that then people probably came to you your whole life when they didn't believe in themselves, when they needed to be cheered up, like when they so it's like your version of coaching, it like you've been doing that your whole life. And then it's like, then you go to coaching school, which we both went to CTI.
Coaches Training
Yeah,
Institute.
we both went to CTI. And it was like, finally I had like I learned this whole toolbox to then do what I had always done, but do it significantly better, because then I had the right tools. But but I just think it's so funny. I remember in high school, like, I was just that kid that would never get off the phone. And my mom, it was a constant battle. My mom would be like, oh my gosh, Amy, get off the phone. And then it was like, I finally got my own phone line. That was the big thing, so that I wasn't disturbing. And then when there was call waiting, and then when you could 3-way call, it was just like my heaven, And then I'm like, my mom still thinks it's hilarious that I basically make a living by talking on the phone with people. Now, of course, we do it with Zoom and video, but it's like by basically having conversations with people, and I make a living off of that. Like, she's like, like, you've been doing this your whole life, kid. I'm like, I know.
It's a great gig. It's an extrovert's gig. I mean, just what you described with the 3-way calling and things like that. You definitely do not need to be an extrovert to be a life coach.
Not at all.
You need all different kinds of people in the field. But yeah, we kind of got off track there, like getting so excited about life coaching. But what we were talking about, as I remind myself, is just the foundation of life coaching is about your values.
Yep.
I always tell people, like, if I can only teach people 2 things, it would be the way you speak to yourself and your values.
Yes.
Because those 2 things, I couldn't pick one. It would be like trying to choose between my 2 children.
Right.
Like, I can't. It's 2 no matter what.
Yes.
It's the way you speak to yourself and your values.
Yes.
number 1.
Yes. I think that is so true. And then you bring in the power of a coach and work with someone that's holding you accountable about those things.
100%.
Right. And the power of accountability. I mean, I always, there's all these amazing studies about accountability and how I can't tell you how many clients have come to me that want to write a book, for example. They have that novel that's unfinished in their drawer and they've been trying to finish it for a decade. And then they put their money where their mouth is. They hire a coach and say, I want to finish this project. And then because they've put their money where their mouth is and they have this coach that's then going to check in with them every week or a couple times a month about that project, they finish it in record time because they finally have the freaking accountability.
Right. In a way, it's like we're avoiding shame and humiliation. Just like whatever works.
Totally.
Well, speaking of writing, you and I have kind of briefly talked about this. And I think that in the self-help world, it's like a thing where in order to save your life, you need to journal. And I have mixed feelings about it because people ask me, they're like, is your morning routine? Like you just like do, what is it called? Morning pages. Right. And I'm like, never done morning pages.
Yeah.
I don't judge people that do it, but I've had like kind of an on again, off again relationship with journaling. What does journaling look like for you?
Same, total, samesies, twinsies. But I actually did do morning pages for a period of time when I was in college, when the Artist's Way book first came out. It was helpful. It was very helpful at that time too, because it was right when I was graduating from college. And so I had just so much to process and had so much fear about like adulting. And so it was just nice to be able to like wake up in the morning, set a timer and just vent.
Yeah.
And
I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who was like, I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, no, it's actually a powerful process and it just depends on who you are and what your style is. But, I've gone through periods where I've journaled every day and then I've gone through periods where I haven't journaled for years. So it just kind of depends on what's going on. I am such a verbal processor too. So I find that if I could have my way, I would start every day with, I do a little shot of vinegar in the morning to clear out my
better than whiskey.
I know, right? You're like, what is Amy about to say? I'm like a shot of Jack Daniels first thing.
Like Kesha, you brush your teeth with it.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay. You can see why we're friends, y'all, because I freaking love Andrea. It's just so good. Oh
Sorry, you do your shot. I do
my shot of raw coconut vinegar because I can't have apple cider vinegar right now. Have some water, then have my decaf coffee, then do a beautiful meditation. This is my ideal morning. This is like very rarely what happens. But then I do my morning meditation and then I would have like an hour-long phone call with one of my close friends to just talk about it.
I thought that was legit your morning thing. And I was like, Amy's got her shit together.
That's like my ideal.
What's your ideal day?
I will say I'm religious about my shot of vinegar for various reasons. And I do have my water and my coffee. And I also am super into the intermittent fasting. So I don't eat my first meal till between 11 and 12. I have that. I do usually do some sort of morning meditation, but sometimes it's like hand on my heart, a deep breath, and then especially right now, it's just like everything's out the window right now. And I'm actually, interestingly enough, my husband and I are both sleeping in later than we normally sleep in because our 6-year-old, her routine in the morning. So this is a perfect thing to let all of you amazing parents off the hook that have this shit down. I mean, she wakes up first thing in the morning. She's the first one in the house. She's learned how to turn on the TV herself. So she comes downstairs every day and watches Frozen 2 by herself in the living room.
So you get another solid 2 hours.
So we get like another 90 minutes of sleep and she doesn't come up and wake us up. That's her TV time because normally on school days, there's no screens in the morning, because we're like too busy. So she gets to do that. It is like her heaven. She's in heaven about this whole thing. And so we've been like sleeping in till like 8:00, which has been a godsend, like silver linings, right? Amongst the craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the same with journaling. And it's funny. I think people assume that I journal and write all the time because I'm a writer and an author. And I go through bouts of it too. And I will say though, it is one of those things where I've never walked away from a journaling session and going, that was a waste of time.
Totally. So true. So true. Yeah. Well, and there's so many different ways of journaling. Like one of my favorite ways, we talked about morning pages. For me, one of my favorite ways, because I talk a lot about the voice of the inner mean girl And then the antidote to that is the voice of the inner wisdom, that voice of truth inside of you.
I'm going to link in the show notes because that's what you talked about. You went into depth in the very first time you were on. So I'm going to link to that in the show notes for anybody who wants more about that.
Awesome. Yeah. And one of the things that I love to do is have my inner wisdom write me a letter. So it's like, dear Amy, and it's usually like, dear amazing, wonderful Amy, whatever. And just remind me of whatever she wants to remind me of in that moment. And usually that can be really short. And like, I always like to say your inner wisdom is your truth teller. So she'll be like, put the drink down, put the guy down, get out of that situation. She's not going to pull any punches, but she's going to say it from compassion and love. Yeah. And she'll also tell you how amazing you are and remind you to give yourself a break and all of that amazing stuff too.
I love that so much. I had Jessica Clark Graham on the podcast a few months ago, and I told everybody that she was someone I worked with last year, and she gave me a lot of journaling exercises.
Nice.
Some of which I would come to our session and say I didn't do it because it was just hard work at sexuality stuff. But I always did end up doing it, and it was incredibly helpful. But so she kind of reignited my love of journaling. But honestly, what my journaling looks like sometimes is like 2 or 3 sentences.
I love that.
And I think I'm doing similar to what you're doing is I sit for a minute and I just like take a breath, take a beat. And I'm like, what needs to come out?
Yes.
And it's always something incredibly empowering and never anything that doesn't sound like something my highest self would say.
Right.
Sometimes it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
Because it's like up leveling.
Yep. Totally.
And I just leave it at that. I don't need
that.
to go into more depth. And I keep it simple.
I love that. Well, can I ask you a question? I don't even know how much time we have, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was curious, like I consider myself an author, but I don't consider myself a writer. And I feel like those two things are two very different things. Is there a distinction there for you? Do you consider yourself a writer and an author? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's funny because it's so funny how everybody makes up different stories about what things are.
Yeah.
So I consider like, if you write, you're a writer.
Okay.
Like anybody's a writer.
Okay.
I didn't even consider myself a real author until I had written my second book.
Okay.
Because my first book, I had told myself a story that it was a fluke.
Really?
That I had a catchy and novelty brand.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't love Your Kick-Ass Life? That I just got lucky.
Oh.
Yeah. And it wasn't until my second book came out and it really kind of caught fire where I was like, oh, I think I might actually have some talent.
Oh my gosh, you're such an amazing writer.
And I told my literary agent and they were like, honey, obviously they're not going to take me on if they don't think that I'm going to make any money for that.
An inner mean girl voice. Oh my goodness.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Oh
and I've been transparent about that here on the podcast, but I love that you asked that question because to me, being a writer is easier. There are less qualifiers than there is to be.
Yeah. Well, and I guess for me, like I always consider a writer someone where their purest form of expression is writing.
Like Hemingway.
Yeah. Or like people who journal every day where they're just like, I cannot live with it doesn't have anything to do with the production of a book. It doesn't have anything to do whether it's literature or whatever, but it's like a writer is someone who has to write, like they have to breathe. Like there's just this impulse. And I don't consider myself that way at all. I would much rather have a conversation. I'd much rather be on a stage speaking in front of 1,000 people, like be on my podcast, doing my thing. Like for me, speaking is probably my purest form of expression.
And that's creativity.
Yeah, totally. It is creativity. And then it's like an author, but I was like, but I feel like I have something to say that is worthy of like being in book form. So I will sit down and write it and author it. But it's kind of a painful experience for me having to put it into words in that way. There's a lot of inner mean girl stuff that comes up for me around it. There's a way in which I think I'm okay at it. I don't think I'm brilliant at it. I think I'm clear and direct. Like, I don't think I'm a terrible writer or anything like that. Like, it's not an inner mean girl thing. It's just more of a discernment of, I think that there are some people like you and other people who I admire where it's like, there is just this way of what they write that just expresses something that I just admire so much that I don't think I have that necessarily.
And it's interesting because I think that about other people as well.
Right.
Like, I think that there are people who are just genuine wordsmiths.
Yeah.
And I don't put myself in that category. Sometimes I'll walk away from a sentence and it'll be like the diamond in the rough. And I'm like, oh, I really like that. I think that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Those are rare.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how our own stuff comes up around that. Because when I listened to Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, she talked about how she spent years honing the craft of writing. And I was like, I don't.
Right. Right. And she's such a...
The more evidence that I am not like her. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how Inner Mean Girl comes in there. But
yes.
Oh,
but there is that. Well, and I will say, like, I love when Martha Beck talks about this. She talks about, I don't like writing, but I love having written.
Mm-hmm.
I totally can get that.
I like both because, especially I think when I lost my dad, well, no, it was before. It was both. When I lost my dad and then the Me Too movement, which those were back-to-back events, I felt like the combined trauma of that forced me into writing poetry. And I mean, forced me in the most loving way. It really was sort of like my inner wisdom took me by the hand and said, honey, this is the route that we need to go down. And it was one of those moments where I don't remember writing some pieces. And that was one of the only times in my life, except when I was a lot younger, where I felt like this was my way out because I sure as shit couldn't drink through it. And so I had to sit down and put on music and just cry my way through the words. And I have looked at pieces where I'm like, I don't remember writing this. B, this is dark as shit. And C, it is truly what saved me. And those happen very rarely. I wish I could say, like, what is that Hemingway quote? Like, you just sit down at the typewriter and bleed. I'm like, come on. Like,
don't be so dramatic, you drunk person. Right?
So dramatic.
Talk about a drunk. Jeez.
But these are the standards, then the expectations that we have as quote unquote writers and authors, where that, and I don't know if I'll ever get that back. Like, do I need to go through some like near-death experience or life-changing moment? Maybe. I don't want that. And I've sat down and tried to write poetry just because it's like a Tuesday and I have an hour to kill. It's not the same. So I think that writing and creativity in general, like those kind of projects can come in any different shape or form. And
I love that. Yeah. Well, and I think that the healing, that's such a powerful healing tool. That's incredible.
It can be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you and I could talk for many, many more hours here.
And we will. And we do.
Different topics. And we will. We certainly will. And I'll have you back on. And again, like, if you love this conversation, please go and listen to the other link that I put in the show notes for Amy's show. It was episode 293. If you just want to go into Apple Podcasts or wherever and grab that show. And funny enough, Amy and I are doing something really exciting and free. And for any of you who, it's not even for people who have like a project or are interested in writing or anything like that. If you just like me and Amy together, if you want more of us, we're doing a free Zoom call, and it's top 10 kick-ass list, a list of the top 10 kick-ass ways to get your project done and out the door. Tips, actually, is what we're calling it, right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Because not because we're trying to put pressure on you during this crazy pandemic time.
Not at all. Oh, totally the opposite.
Yeah. And it's like giving yourself permission to do those things that you want to do and to really find that inspiration. If, because I know that you believe this too. It's like, we want you to be fueled by inspiration, not fear. And there's this sense of urgency right now happening too. And we see it in our clients. We see it in the world. We see it in ourselves of like, okay, what am I really here to do? What is it that I really value? What's important to me? And if Andrea and I can help you in some way to get your project done and out the door, if that's what you want, then we're here for you.
And project, it could be anything from, because I know there's a lot of you listening who have asked me about book writing. You want to start that fiction novel. You want to write that nonfiction book proposal. It could be big projects like that, or start a blog. I still meet a lot of women who want to start a blog, and they're like, I have so many things I want to write about, and I want to write a blog and never do it. But it could just be, Amy and I were talking about journaling or writing poetry or processing stuff. Maybe you've always wanted to do morning pages and you just don't have the accountability. like come to the call. Like this isn't just for people who want to write books. It's for people who are interested in getting something meaningful done.
That's exactly right. I love that. Getting something meaningful done and keeping their word to themselves. Like I feel like that's one of the things when people are like, well, how do I build up my self-love and self-esteem? And I'm like, keeping your word to yourself. That's a huge part of
self-integrity.
Yeah. And so often it's like, well, I'll get to that when, and it's like, well, what if now? What if right now?
Right.
And what if you say, you know what? I care enough about myself and my projects or my inspirations or my musings to
Or
your legacy. Yeah. To really get it done in some way. Yeah.
Take some action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't going to be like, okay, here's a big giant list of things for you to go and do to make you feel worse about yourself. Yeah. Just come and hang out with us live if you can. It's April 22nd at 3 Eastern. That's noon Pacific. And if you can't make it, if you are working from home or still going to work or homeschooling or whatever, there will be a recording. But we would love to be able to see your faces. Or if you don't want to be on video, you don't have to be on video. We'll be there on video. And it's wakeupcallcoach.com/project. That's Amy's site. wakeupcallcoach.com/project. And there's a link in the show notes.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this.
I am pumped. You and I we just have so much chemistry together, and I'm excited to get on the phone with people that we can serve and help them get through this. Yeah.
I know. Any way we can be of service to anybody right now just is part of us leaving our legacy and doing the work that we're here to do. So
yeah, I just want to say one more thing too, just for the sake of total transparency. The first week that it was really bad, so that week of March 16th, like I came to the group that we're in and was like crying and feeling, my inner mean girl was telling me that I wasn't showing up enough for my community. And I was like, I need to be doing immediate Zoom calls, live, holding space for everybody. And I just was like, you guys, I can't even. So I was making up all these stories of how I had to show up and really through support from you and other women in my life, I was able to walk through that. And it was my anxiety too, like everyone else's. My point is that Amy and I slowly and consciously and intentionally figured out something that we're both really great at, that we're super pumped to be able to offer our community. And that's this, because I've never offered anything like this, but I do have people ask me about it. So I'm also delighted to be able to do it with you.
Aww,
so
thank you. I feel the same way about you. You're just
I don't like doing these things as much by myself.
Me neither. I'm such talk about values, like collaboration, community, connection, like top value for me. And so it's so much more fun to do it with someone else and be able to reach more people and be able to really, be of service in that way. And I think that I love that you named that, Andrea, about that. I think we all are having our days when we're feeling the gratitudes about everything that's going on and seeing the silver lining and snuggling in with our families. And then we have days where we read another story or we're just at the end of our rope with juggling work and kids, if you have kids or whatever it is that you're juggling, or maybe you're alone and you're feeling really isolated right now. And we just, all of us have our bandwidth. And just so that you allowing yourself to process how hard this is not you taking for granted that you're not the one on the respirator or you're not the nurse that's having to go in right now to the hospital again with a mask that is not, new. So there's a way that we can hold that paradox together. There's a way that we can be grateful for our lives, be grateful we have a roof over our heads, be grateful that we're privileged enough to sit here and talk on a podcast right now, and also feel the grief and really feel the gratitude for the people that are risking their lives every day. So we can hold both of those things.
100%. Yeah. Stay home, everybody. You can join us from your smartphone, your computer on April 22nd, wakeupcallcoach.com/project, and we will see you there.
Bye.
Bye.